Alex Rodda was a 15-year-old boy from Knutsford in England. He attended the Holmes Chapel Comprehensive School in Cheshire, Greater Manchester. In 2019, Alex was in Year 11 and was extremely popular amongst his friendship group. As well as being described as a thoughtful and loving young boy, Alex was openly gay and quite an outgoing person. He was extremely fortunate in that his friends and family were so accepting of him and didn't treat him any differently to how they had done before he came out. In late October of 2019, Alex was using Facebook when his attention was caught by an older boy. This boy had also attended the same school as him. This boy was later identified as 19-year-old Matthew Mason. It is unclear as to whether Alex had already known of Matthew from school, or whether he had stumbled across him through mutual contact on Facebook that day. But despite the 4-year age gap, Alex decided to send a message to Matthew. For those that don't know, the age of consent in the UK is 16 years old. Had Alex been 16 when he began to message Matthew, this wouldn't have been a problem. It may have been frowned upon, but not illegal, and no charges could have been made against Matthew. Matthew Mason was a quiet guy from an affluent church-going family, an outdoorsy farmer's son who had left high school to study at college. Matthew, unlike Alex, was not gay, and in fact had been in a relationship for 2 years with a girl called Caitlin. Despite this, when Matthew seen that Alex had messaged him, he decided to respond. The messages between the pair started off polite, with them both asking one another how their days were going. But around a week later, these messages began to turn more intimate. Matthew claims that this began when Alex had complimented him, telling him that he was fit. This is quite a common term in the UK that simply means handsome or attractive. It seems that this had had quite a positive effect on Matthew, because he gave Alex his Snapchat username, and from there, they both began to exchange images back and forth. One night, drunk after a night out at the pub, Matthew had sent Alex a nude picture of his genitals. Due to Alex being underage, at just 15 years old, this was illegal, and this could have been seen as him trying to groom Alex and also sending sexual images to a child. However, Matthew would later claim that Alex had asked him to. Even if this was so, it was still a crime and a chargeable offence. Being that he was the adult in the situation, he should have put a stop to it. Matthew had also sent Alex a video of him masturbating. These messages would have devastating consequences and end in a very avoidable tragedy. It was a couple of days later when Alex found out that Matthew had in fact been hiding a secret from him, and this was his girlfriend. Alex, who had excitedly been telling his friends about a new boy he'd been seeing, felt betrayed by Matthew. Feeling anger and frustration, he decided to send another message, this time to Matthew's girlfriend Caitlin, exposing her boyfriend for his illicit relationship with him. Matthew later admitted that he had begun to question his sexuality when Alex had messaged him. He began to consider the fact that he could be bisexual. However, this was something that he had kept strictly to himself, and the thought of anyone else finding out about this, especially his girlfriend, was too much to bear. On November the 3rd, Alex had written to Caitlin, "Are you going out with Matt Mason?" To which she had replied, "Yes." Alex then replied, "Because I thought I should let you know that for the past 2 to 3 weeks Matt has been trying to message me. He came to my house in his car to meet me last week, but I told him my dad wouldn't let me out, so I didn't meet him. I have told him it has to stop, but just thought I'd let you know before he does a dickhead move. And I didn't know he was dating you until I went to go and follow him on Instagram." Meanwhile, Alex also messaged Matthew, apparently explaining why he'd contacted his girlfriend. When Matthew reacted furiously and asked why he had done it, Alex replied, "Because it's wrong. You have a girlfriend that loves you. There's no need to speak to me." "You need to tell your girlfriend the truth, Matt, because I already have." At that point, the relationship between the teenagers took a disturbing turn. Later that day, Matthew added Alex as a payee to his bank account and transferred him £50. This had come just minutes after Alex told Matthew that he still had the nude image that he had sent to him and suggested that he would post it online. When Matthew had tried to deny ever sending such an image, Alex got annoyed and said, "Don't lie, I will literally put it on my story if you don't stop lying." Matthew then began to plead with Alex, telling him that he was trying to talk to his girlfriend and come clean to her. However, at this point, Caitlin had already dumped Matthew following the claims by Alex. Despite the apparent animosity between them, on November the 9th, the pair had met up and Alex performed a sex act on Matthew. In the first 2 weeks of that month, Matthew paid Alex a total of £1,270, with the payments all linked to sexual encounters. Alex confided in his friends during this time and told them everything that he was doing. They said that Alex knew what he was doing wasn't right, but he still did it anyway. In one message, a friend said, "You need to stop, it's not fair. If he doesn't pay you, what will you do?" Alex replied, "Tell the feds and get him on the sex offenders." His friend then wrote back, "And then he says you blackmailed him. Yeah, great plan. It's a criminal offence, when are you going to stop, seriously?" Alex replied back, "Love you, gorgeous. Give you £50 for Christmas. Kiss kiss." Later on, one of Alex's friends told police that Matthew would often go round to Alex's home whilst his mum went out, and this was done on at least 5 occasions. Alex was speaking to his girlfriends frequently about his new relationship. It boosted his confidence, with friends recalling how he seemed to be glowing around school. Messages between him and Mason showed that Alex was now asking for more money as time went on. However, at one point, Matthew told Alex that he was skint and couldn't afford it, but then went on to pay the schoolboy £700. Georgia Wiseman, a close friend of Alex's, told the jury that she thought he saw it as a game, stating, "The difference between him being a child and an adult, he was naive. I don't think he understood the concept of everything." On December the 7th, just 5 days before tragedy occurred, Matthew Mason came face to face with the schoolboy's mother. Upon seeing Matthew Mason in her home when she returned from being out, Lisa Rodda's blood ran cold. She later described him as having cold and soulless eyes. Lisa Rodda would later comment, "When I looked into that boy's eyes, I have never ever felt fear like it in my life. My whole body felt fear. He was like a robot." Text messages would later indicate that Lisa Rodda had interrupted Matthew Mason having sex with Alex. In another message by one of Alex's friends, they had branded him a prostitute, to which he replied, "Money, money, money." Later that same day, Matthew Mason had transferred £100 to Alex. This would be his final payment. Internet searches over the next couple of days revealed that Matthew was already thinking about killing Alex. His search terms online read, "What would happen if you kick someone down the stairs? Everyday poison, things that are poisonous, people missing in Cheshire, and the mysteries of Cheshire, unsolved deaths of missing people." Alex was last seen on CCTV, leaving his house on Holly Grove at 5:24 p.m. after Matthew had messaged him on Snapchat. A friend of Alex's said that he was happy about going out with Matthew, but following a FaceTime call, their concerns had grown. "He called me and said, 'How weird is this?' they said. I said, 'What's weird?' And he replied, 'This guy I'm meeting wants to take me to a special secret place in a forest.'" The witness said that Alex was confused during the call, but had later agreed to going out with Matthew because he needed the money. Minutes after getting into Matthew's car, Alex had posted a picture to his Snapchat story. It showed the inside of Matthew's car and had a small love heart emoji at the bottom. this would be the last message that he ever sent. On that cold and rainy night, Matthew drove Alex to a woodland in Ashley near Altrincham in his black Renault Clio. He parked up the car and then dragged Alex from the vehicle, raining down at least 15 heavy blows to his head with a wrench. Following the attack, Matthew left Alex alone and partially clothed to die. Alex had still been breathing as Matthew stood over him smoking a cigarette before deciding upon his next move. He discovered Alex's phone on the passenger seat and got rid of it. Matthew knew how much evidence was on the phone, and to this day, it has not been recovered. As friends and family of Alex frantically began to search for him, Matthew went into the Red Lion pub in Pickmere and the Golden Pheasant pub in Plumley, where he had a drink with friends before eventually making his way home. A Snapchat selfie he had sent to friends from the pub, and a bare-chested photo of himself he sent smiling later on to his ex-girlfriend from his bed, were callous attempts to cover his tracks. Meanwhile, Alex's mum Lisa was becoming increasingly concerned when he did not return home. She had made numerous attempts to ring his phone, but the calls would not connect. She rang a number of his friends who all said that they had not seen or spoken to him that evening. As Alex's friends knew that he had formed a relationship with Matthew Mason, they messaged him for over 2 hours, desperate to know that he was safe and well. Alex's mum was made aware of this and contacted Matthew herself before reporting her son missing to police. Most of their calls and messages went unanswered as Matthew Mason travelled back to the scene of his horrific crime in the early hours of Friday the 13th of December. It is during this time that the prosecution believed Matthew Mason went back to the woods and dragged Alex's now lifeless body to the side of the road in an attempt to put him inside his car. After failing to do this, he then drove away, leaving Alex's body in the middle of the road. One final message ended Matthew Mason's hopes of getting away with murder. At 25 to 1 a.m, Cheshire Police texted Matthew, "Matthew, could you please contact Cheshire Police with regards to your friend Alex? Thank you." Stephen Wilson, a bin man, would be the one to find Alex's body during the morning bin round collections. In court, he said, "At 7:40 a.m. on December the 13th, 2019, me and my colleagues were driving along Ashley Mill Lane when one of my colleagues said, 'There's a dead body in the road.' He jumped out and saw it at the side of the road. The body was face down and I started trying to find a pulse. I then rang 999. The ambulance gave me instructions to start CPR. I could see he had blood on his head and it appeared he had a wound at the base of his back. He had mud on his face. I was instructed over the phone to start chest compressions on the body and continued to do that for 10 minutes. A statement from a paramedic who raced to the scene said that resuscitation attempts were unsuccessful and Alex's time of death was pronounced at 8:12 a.m. After Alex's body had been found, a witness informed police that he had taken a photograph shortly after 6 p.m. on Thursday the 12th of December, as he had suspected a drug deal going down in the area. This photo showed a black Renault Clio parked on the track beside the gated entrance to the woods. The details of the car were checked by police, and none other than Matthew Mason was identified as the owner. Around 12 hours later, at noon on December the 13th, Matthew Mason, who was instantly suspected by Alex's mother, was stopped by police on the A41 in Staffordshire and promptly arrested. Matthew had dried blood on his hands and fingers, and inside the boot of the car was a bin bag, with his blood-stained green fleece, the wrench used to kill Alex, and Alex's large padded jacket. Following his arrest, he was taken into custody to be questioned before eventually being charged with the murder of Alex Rodda. A year later, he went on trial at Chester Crown Court. Having been found guilty on January the 25th, 2021, he was sentenced to a minimum life sentence of 28 years. However, in June of 2021, a successful appeal by Matthew Mason got his sentence reduced. a panel of 3 Court of Appeal judges agreed to reduce the minimum term he must serve in prison to 26 years, after ruling that the initial sentence was manifestly excessive. Alex's father, Adam Rodda Sr., reacted furiously, stating, "If he's not too young to have murdered somebody, then he's not too young to take the sentence." Alex's funeral was held on the 29th of January 2020. Hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects to the well-loved boy. The small Cheshire village of Ardlam stood completely still as Alex's hearse quietly made its way through the streets. There were also large crowds gathered outside the church where the service was held to celebrate Alex's life.